Blood pooled around Marcus as Officer Wilson stood over him, smoking gun still raised. 3 miles away, Commander Jackson received the call about his son. The veteran Navy SEAL commander closed his eyes, picked up his phone, and activated the contingency plan years in the making. Before we dive into this shocking story of injustice and accountability, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that subscribe button and join our community fighting for justice and truth. This story will show you how one grieving father used his specialized training to bring down a corrupt system from the inside. Marcus Johnson had always been careful. Growing up as the only son of Commander Isaiah Johnson, a decorated Navy SEAL with 30 years of service, Marcus had received countless lectures about how to conduct himself as a young black man in America. On this particular Tuesday afternoon, the 19-year-old pre-med student at Howard University was driving through the affluent neighborhood of Oakwood Heights to pick up his girlfriend Tasha for a study date. His car, a graduation gift from his father, drew immediate attention from Officer Richard Wilson, a 42-year-old police officer patrolling the area. Wilson, known among his colleagues for his aggressive tactics in what he called high-risk neighborhoods, immediately profiled Marcus as suspicious. The truth was that Wilson had a history of racial complaints spanning his 15-year career, but they had all been buried in personnel files and dismissed through the protective culture of the department. Wilson followed Marcus's car for several blocks, looking for any excuse to initiate a stop. When Marcus signaled for a right turn, a few seconds later than Wilson deemed appropriate, the officer flipped on his lights and siren. Marcus pulled over immediately, positioning his car properly against the curb on Maple Avenue, a tree-lined street of million-dollar homes. He remembered everything his father had taught him. Keep your hands visible on the steering wheel. Move slowly. Announce your actions before you make them. Be respectful, but know your rights. Officer Wilson approached with his hand already resting on his holstered weapon, a posture he didn't take with the white drivers he pulled over. When Wilson reached the driver's side window, his face showed visible surprise at seeing a well-dressed young black man in such an expensive car. Marcus maintained perfect composure, addressing the officer respectfully. Wilson demanded license and registration, not bothering to inform Marcus of the reason for the stop. "Are you aware of why I pulled you over today?" Wilson asked, his tone suggesting he expected to catch Marcus in a lie. "No, sir. I don't believe I was speeding or violating any traffic laws," Marcus replied calmly. This seemed to irritate Wilson, who took the respectful response as a challenge to his authority. The fact that this kid, as Wilson thought of him, despite Marcus being a legal adult, would question his judgment made his blood boil. "You were driving suspiciously," Wilson said, a vague accusation that could mean anything or nothing. "You don't belong in this neighborhood." Marcus had heard this before, the implication clear. Black people don't belong in wealthy white areas unless they're there to serve. From a nearby porch, Barbara Whitman, a 68-year-old retired teacher, noticed the interaction and felt uneasy about the officer's aggressive stance. She took out her phone and began recording discreetly. "Step out of the vehicle," Wilson ordered, his voice rising. Marcus, still following his father's instructions for these situations, asked calmly, "May I ask why I need to exit the vehicle, officer?" For Wilson, this simple question was the ultimate disrespect. He immediately reached for his weapon, pulling it from its holster and aiming it at Marcus through the car window. "I said get out of the car now," Wilson shouted, his face contorted with rage. Marcus slowly raised his hands to show he wasn't a threat. As he reached for the door handle with his right hand, his wallet fell from his lap. Without thinking, Marcus reached down to catch it. "I need to get my ID," he said clearly, but Wilson had already made his decision. 3 shots rang out in 3 successive sessions. Barbara Whitman screamed from her porch, her hands still recording, as Marcus's body slumped forward against the steering wheel. Blood began to spread across his light blue button-down shirt, a gift from his mother on his last birthday. Wilson stood there, gun still raised, as if surprised by his own actions. Then training kicked in, and he called for backup, his voice strangely calm as he reported that shots had been fired and the suspect was down after reaching for something. Wilson made no attempt to check Marcus's condition or provide any medical assistance. He simply stood by the car, weapon still drawn, waiting for backup to arrive. Barbara continued recording, her hands shaking, but her resolve firm. She captured Wilson's casual stance, his lack of urgency, and eventually the arrival of paramedics who pronounced Marcus dead at the scene. Only after the paramedics began their work did Wilson holster his weapon and begin searching the car and Marcus's belongings. That's when he found the military-dependent ID card alongside Marcus's student ID from Howard University. The officer's face changed as he realized this wasn't just any black kid from the city. The name Johnson meant nothing to him at that moment, but the military connection sent a chill down his spine. Military families had resources, connections, and weren't as easily intimidated by police authority. By then, Barbara had stopped recording and was already uploading the video to social media. Within an hour, the unedited footage of a police officer shooting a clearly non-threatening young black man would begin spreading across the internet. One more addition to a tragic collection of similar videos. But this one would have very different consequences than most because of who Marcus Johnson's father was and the network he had built over 3 decades of military service. Commander Isaiah Johnson was reviewing mission reports at the Naval Special Warfare Command when his secure phone rang. He recognized the area local code, but not the number itself. Something deep in his warrior intuition told him to brace himself before answering. "Commander Johnson," a female voice said. "This is Detective Sandra Morris with the Metropolitan Police Department. There's been an incident involving your son Marcus." The words that followed seemed to come from very far away, as if traveling through water to reach his ears. "Officer involved shooting. Pronounced dead at the scene. Apparent misunderstanding. Investigation ongoing. Internal affairs. Standard procedure." The detective's rehearsed phrases washed over him as 30 years of military discipline kept him from collapsing. "Thank you for the information, Detective," he said, his voice betraying none of the volcanic grief and rage building inside him. "I'll be making arrangements immediately. Is there anything else at this time?" The detective, clearly surprised by his composure, stammered that someone would be in touch about releasing his son's body once the medical examiner completed their work. As soon as the call ended, Isaiah closed his eyes and allowed himself exactly 60 seconds of raw emotion. In that minute, memories flooded through him. Teaching 4-year-old Marcus to swim, 8-year-old Marcus proudly wearing his father's oversized Navy cap, 12-year-old Marcus asking thoughtful questions about why police seemed to treat them differently, 16-year-old Marcus behind the wheel for his first driving lesson, and just 2 months ago, Marcus in his graduation cap and gown, full of promise and plans for medical school. The timer on Isaiah's watch beat, signaling the end of his allotted grief time. Now it was time for action. Isaiah had survived and thrived through decades of service in an institution that hadn't always welcomed black men in leadership. He had navigated racism, both subtle and overt, throughout his career, rising to command through excellence that couldn't be denied. And through it all, he had built a network, a brotherhood that transcended race, branch of service, and political affiliation. Brothers and sisters who had bled together, saved each other's lives, and sworn oaths that went beyond their military service. Isaiah had always known this day might come, not necessarily to his son, but to someone he loved. He had watched too many videos, read too many reports, attended too many funerals. So he had prepared, creating Protocol Phoenix years ago, an organized response to the specific threat of police violence against his family. Isaiah's first call was to Lieutenant Commander Raymond Torres, his second-in-command and closest friend. "Ray," he said when Torres answered, "Phoenix is active. Marcus." Those 3 words were all Torres needed. The lieutenant commander's voice shifted immediately from casual to mission-focused. "I'm on my way to you. Initial contact going out now." "Time frame, 40 minutes for the first wave," Isaiah replied. "Set up at my house, full kit." Torres didn't waste time with condolences or questions. Those would come later, in private, when the mission was complete. "Understood. We're with you, Commander." Isaiah's next call was to Vanessa Washington, a prominent civil rights attorney he had kept on retainer for 5 years, specifically for this scenario. Miss Washington, he said when she answered, "This is Commander Johnson. We discussed a potential situation some time ago. I regret to inform you that the situation is now active." Washington, who had been skeptical when the commander first approached her about being on standby for such a specific scenario, now understood his foresight. "I've already seen the video, Commander," she said, her voice gentle but determined. "It's being shared widely. I'm so sorry about your son. I'm gathering my team now." Isaiah thanked her and outlined his expectations. Full legal pressure on every front. No publicity stunts or grandstanding. Methodical and relentless pursuit of justice through every available channel. Washington agreed completely. "I'll need access to your network's intelligence as it comes in. We'll establish secure communications within the hour," Isaiah promised. While making the